Hello guys, how are we doing? Welcome back to the channel. Today is my second episode of this new series we've got going on here, which is basically the secret to winning Hardpoint. It's the angles you want to be holding when you're on certain hills and the best way in which to rotate. This isn't going to cover spawns specifically. I do mention spawns because obviously they're integral, but it's not going to cover spawns specifically because I do completely separate spawn guides. If you want to know the actual how the spawns work in this map, feel free to drop it down in the comments. I can link you to the video, or you can just check out the channel. There's tons of spawn guides for each map. So today obviously we're kicking off with Terminal, and as I said, it's going to be perfect. If you're in a 4-man, it's going to be even better because you can honestly strategize, send this to the 4-man you're in, and you can hold these hills almost perfectly with these tips. Now, if you're not in a 4-man, I get it might be a little bit more difficult for you to implement these sort of strategies, but you can sort of take note of these and say, okay, which one do I need to fill in? You can look at the minimap and say, okay, my teammates are all here, here, and here. Let's go here. And the main logic behind all of these setups is that there isn't a lane open and you're blocking the spawns. That's the whole logic. And this is just potentially the optimum setups you can have. Now, obviously, there are probably better setups you can have as your team. That works better for your team, but these are just suggestions and a couple of ideas that might help you out if you're just struggling on where to hold. So kicking off with P1 on Terminal here, which is in the bookshop currently. The two main spawns are back security, and as a result, you need to be blocking his. Number 4 needs to sort of be back here, otherwise it can open up the spawn for the enemy. So number 4 is integral. So this guy will probably likely have an AR, and he can be watching the pinch through Burger through old P1, as well as helping out front book if required. Now at the bottom here, player number 1 is pushed out towards perfume or shop or jewels, whatever you guys want to call it, and he's literally holding the longest line of sight all the way down the middle of the map. He's playing for that info, playing for that, baiting out, and he's just basically making sure that people can't come through plane and no one can sort of run up to the front of the hill without being seen previously. Now this guy, he's meant to be putting a lot of damage out. He's meant to be shouldering this little area, putting damage out to people down here for the rest of his team to finish them off. But his main role here is to not let anyone through plane. Now, number 3 is pushed out to bottom third or top, like bottom red, whatever you guys want to call it. He's basically on this little platform outside of AC, top AC, and he's basically holding this close cut. So in this position, and then you have number 2, just in the hill, obviously. Now, in this position, the enemies are likely to spawn bottom Eskies just here, or maybe even a little bit further out to here. But realistically, this is where they're going to be spawning. So the common routes you might see them take are up Eskies like this, and they may then decide to go all the way around to Burger, or they might decide to hit this choke point just like so. One person might decide to jump up top third to watch, to try and challenge the hill from there, and another guy might decide to take a route through a plane. So that's exactly why you got to watch these areas, as I say. But you've really got to be playing as a team here. You've got to be playing off each other. Number 4 can pretty much solely watch Burger, but number 1, if I'm honest, is one of the most important players in this situation because he can see all the way down this line of sight. He can literally see if anyone crosses out their spawn and decides to go all the way around here to Burger or decides to come to the front of the hill. He's the guy who needs to be perfect with the comms, providing all the information possible. And then number 3 is the guy who's hopefully getting the kills. He's hopefully the guy that's getting the most kills out here, playing a Slay. He can be a sub or an AR, and we'll get into that in a second. But he's getting the initial kills here, maybe going red, hopping up top or something like that. But realistically, he doesn't want to be blocking his backside spawn, so he doesn't want to push up top until the very late on in the hill. All he really wants to do is play this area here. You can sit in the toilet, or just generally this area here, but that's generally what he needs to be doing. Now, when it comes to the end of the hill, obviously P2 is where number 6 is currently here, where my cursor is, and you're going to sort of want to flip. So when you get 4 down in this position, what you want to try and do is rotate. So you can see that the player who was at this tree here has gone into the hill and is just challing back out. The player who was on the hill is picking up the hall, and the player that was watching the hall is picking up the plane to overlook the current hill. And then the guy who was here has run down Eskies. He's blocking the spawn by doing so. He's chowed through here, maybe got a couple of kills of people on up Eskies, and now he's turned around and he's watching the P1. Now, they won't flip here, and this is essentially what you want to do for the last 15 seconds of P1 because it gives them bad spawns for the new hill, which is obviously the most important thing. So, and then from here, you've got everything watched. Number 4 is watching front. If he even gets pushed, They might push him, they might not. Number 3 is checking if anyone's pushing through directly to the new hill. And number 2 is being that person who should be giving the info to number 1 in case anyone on the blue team decides to run through, just like so. And then number 1 is there basically to make sure that no one slips through the net. So he can help. He can help out number 2. He can help out number 4 if needed. And he's basically in this plane, and he's got a nice little position for the new hill, which we'll see now. So I know the numbers have changed around a bit, but you guys should just get the gist. So on this map, you're going to see a lot of situations in which ARs are involved. Now here, most of these players are going to be ARs on this defense side. Again, most players on here are going to be ARs. Arguably, number 2 and number 3 could be subs, but it gives them a little bit more limitations. And in this setup, again, you want the sub to probably be in hill and then 3 ARs. So it's really beneficial to use 4 ARs on this map, but I get it if your playstyles don't suit that. But just try and hold these angles whilst holding a tighter cut, with a sub, if that's all you can do. So moving on to P2, let's go from the top to the bottom. Number 3 here is Top Eskies watching the push through Burger. Number 2 is a really, really important player here. He's on the God spot, top 3rd, and his main focus is going to be pretty much this cross here. That's going to be his main focus. And then what he can do, he can help out Book, and he can help out number 3, Top Eskies here, if he wants. And then number 4 is in front plane, and all they're doing pretty much is watching the Book as well. So you've got 2 people watching Book, 2 people watching the P1 side, and then potentially number 4 realistically could run down here and beam like so. But generally speaking, number 4 is only important here. Number 4 only needs to react to anyone crossing here if number 2 tells them, realistically. You could have a slightly different situation here where you've got number 4 pushed out to this heady and he's watching long, and then number 2 just picks up Book. But this tends to work better, at the least for this hill. So yeah, with these players in this, and then number 1 is on the hill watching the cut under the plane. So if a player from here runs out and decides to not run through the through the connector here to number 4, he decides to jump out the window and take a route, number 1 is going to have the info to get him. He should not need to worry about anyone pushing him from his top, because these other teammates should have him. So obviously you're going to need to win your gunfights. These aren't perfect setups in that you don't need to win gunfights, but you're going to have to do so to maintain this setup. Moving on to P3 here, obviously you're going to want to flip again. And arguably here, you're going to have 3 ARs, 1 sub, maximum. It's such an AR hill just because of the long line of sights you get on here. So, starting from the top to the bottom again, you've got number 3, who's sort of in this dining area to hold this push through Top Eskies. Don't forget, P4, the next hill off after this one is Bergtown. So he's sort of defending that, because chances are a lot of the time they're going to push around that side to get the spawns back here. Number 4 is doing a couple things. So their job is to watch Book, help number 3 if needed, and then just being in this position will block the back spawn for the enemy so they don't spawn there. And then number 2 is on the hill. He's been a lovely little hill kitten in this particular hold. He's watching front connector as well as the hop up at the window. Obviously there is a nice little jump up here. If you've seen my terminal map guide, you'd have seen that. But yeah, number 2 can watch both these angles, and then number 1 can be the fail safe. He's watching the hall. Any players that run through the hall that don't get picked off by number 4, he's picking up the players that run through connector, and number 2's had to lay down because they're weak. He's playing that. He can be the sub SMG role. He can play this really close angle here, make sure no one can get through. And then even if someone does get through the window here and number 2 can't finish the kill, number 1 can just challenge just like so. So this player here is that really nice slayery player. Just be very cautious. You don't want to push too far into plane here, because you will flip the spawns. They will block the back spawns here. But in this general position, as long as number 4 or somebody is blocking this back spawn by being this side of Book, the other team will pretty much spawn there. So their common routes are going to be top, maybe halls, and one might take a route through plane. But generally speaking, that's what's going to happen. So moving on to, I'm moving these back, because that's where they're going to spawn. So moving on to P4, obviously it's the Spurg one. Now there's a lot of red lines here. Now that's because this is a very long line of sight hold you're going to have. So I'll start with the primary holds that we're going to be looking at here. So number 2 is the dude blocking Obviously, this is a very common block spot. It's very easy to block both the spawns back here from here. So number 2 is doing that. And from here, he's literally watching book. He's making sure no one's pinching. No one from blue team is running up here, getting to book and pinching like that. So he's got that covered. Number 3 is watching the front, as is number 4. Now, the reason 2 people are watching this is because it's a very common thing for teams to just bash the front out. So you commonly get maybe 1 or 2 people pushing the front here. So that's why I sort of attribute 2 teammates to watch that. Just because if they get through here, they can contest the hill, then the hill's pretty much pointless because they don't have to get all the way into the hill anymore. They can literally just sit behind that block and get in. So having 2 people watching that is sort of essential. And then you have number 1 who's sat on the bin inside the hill, and he's literally watching the whole flank like here. So he probably isn't going to be able to get this kill, but he's going to be able to tell number 2 here that he can see somebody crossing through jewels, and as a result number 2 can then turn and watch this as well, and then number 4 can then help out number 2 by turning around, or number 3 can in fact help out number 2. So number 3 and number 4 have to be sort of very well communicated with each other. If one's turning around to watch the flank, if someone gets called out, the other one can't. So you've got to be very aware of the minimum. Now, if you're a solo player here, obviously it's going to be difficult. You don't want 2 people in the hill, so if you're in the hill, make sure nobody else gets in there. If someone else jumps in the hill with you, obviously try and get out or try and just get some kills. But yeah, you just want to be checking the minimap at all times if you are a solo player and you can't rely on the comms. So moving towards P5, obviously P5 is down here, so you're going to want to sort of switch the spawns. So say in this setup here, you manage to get the initial kills and you want to flip the spawns. So the easiest way to flip the spawns is to get to top eskies. So what I would recommend doing if you do want to try and flip is the 2 guys who were sort of watching the initial push get their kills, they push on through exactly where the enemies were coming from. They'd probably come into enemies again maybe, so they can apply the pressure quite early here, and in an ideal world they win their gunfights. Obviously this is an ideal situation we're looking at here, and then they get the hill at P5, which is over here, but they've got this back spawn control so that the enemies ended up spawning out just like here. And then the guy who was at the planter, who was realistically the person blocking, they run through jewels to catch up any strays from the plane, and then he basically sits in plane and just turns around and makes sure that these guys don't go privy and then go, because a lot of times if people get flipped at the very last second of a hill, they leave it, they try and take a route, so you'll probably end up having a guy run through book. So this guy can be watching that as well as his own back from anyone running through connected like down here. And then number 1, again, is still in the hill. They're providing the information to the team. So if for example, number 1 saw number 6 decide to take a route, he can communicate that to number 2 or live ping it if you're in a solo queue, and then number 2 can be like, okay, this guy needs killing, and go and kill him. But realistically, as soon as you push out this bottom spawn and you open up this spawn, the other team are going to spawn there. Moving on to P5. Now P5 is a very, very, very mixy hill because spawns are so easily blocked. I'm going to cover it very briefly because it's important for this particular hill. But the main 2 spawn points for this hill at this side of the map are back lounge and back plane. In order to block back plane, you sort of need someone on the bottom floor, like not in the plane but on the floor, sort of in this general area, which is why number 3's there. And then to block pink, and you can, to be fair, you can block it from all the way up here as well. So anywhere in this general bottom plane area will block this back spawn here. And then similarly, to block this spawn back lounge, you need someone generally either on the hill or top third or just general area. It's such a massive space to block, which is why it's important to hold a very, very forward line, almost halfway up the map. You can see here in this setup, you're not even letting people get halfway past the map because all it takes is one guy to get through to here, and he's got the potential of blocking this spawn. As soon as he gets through to here, he's blocking both spawns, and you end up both teams spawning out, which is why sometimes on this hill, you have one team spawning here and another team spawning here, and then you end up having like a gunfight here. But generally speaking, if you hold this setup, it should be strong enough so that people end up just, the enemy team are the only people spawning out. So again, number 1, top eskies watching the push through burger. Number 4 is holding a very similar position to what they were doing on P2. Their main job is to watch the cross through jewels, as well as benefiting the help of player number 1 and player number 2 in watching book, and they're pushed through the old P1 side just here, the plus, let's call that. And then obviously number 2 is watching book, and then number 3 again is holding a similar role. They're on the hill, they're blocking both the pink and yellow spawns from this sort of position, and they can see under the plane as well. So if anyone decides to, flank and drop down and then take a route. Number 3, sorry, in the hill can get this. Now, again, very long line of sights here. You're going to want ARs on every player. I've got to be honest, you don't want to let them get anywhere near the hill, and you don't want to flip. You want to maintain some sort of block positions if you need to. So you want to play a long distance gun, range gun fights, and make sure you're on a good spot so that you can win them. So yeah, that's actually probably going to do it. If there's anything I've missed, feel free to drop a question down below in the comments, or you can join my Disc if you want to private chat me or just ask a question in there. There's a friendly community going on, so even if I don't answer straight away, I'm sure someone who's well educated will as well. So that'll do for me. As I said, let me know what maps you want next, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao for now.